Let's go to the big news of the day, that RBA decision this afternoon to raise the official cash rate by 50 basis points to 1.35%. Third rate rise we've seen for the third month in a row. And we were back at 0.1 in November 2020, so it's moved along pretty fast. Let's bring in Sky's business editor Ross Greenwood to explain what this means for you and the economy. Ross, a big hit for mortgage owners. They will certainly have an increase this month on an average mortgage. We're told it's $500 or more a month. It's been moving steadily the last 3 months, but more to come. What's the worst part?
Yeah, look, the worst part is that the Reserve Bank here today in the statement said that there are more rate rises coming. It says it doesn't believe that inflation will peak until late this year. The Reserve Bank certainly, I believe, has been slow in acknowledging inflation is as bad as it has been and really as sticky as it has been. And so as a result, you've seen, as we saw on the previous chart, this increase the last 2 months. You've got to go back to the early 90s before you see rate rises as vigorous as this really coming from a central bank. Now, this is about the Reserve Bank wanting to get on top of inflation as quickly as it possibly can. But as the Bank of England governor has said previously, this is a very narrow path. You get this wrong, you get your timing wrong, you really do threaten your economy and economic growth. And already we know that economic growth will slow next year as house prices fall, as people really do feel a pinch from the rising prices. And do understand that the Reserve Bank is adding to those rising prices by increasing the price of money, increasing the price of mortgages. So you mentioned about the hundreds of dollars. Well, think about this. 1/4% is worth about $500, give or take, on a $750,000 typical mortgage. So already that mortgage has gone up by the best part of $1,250, nearly $1,300 in the past 3 months. And that really accounts, if you go further forward, to nearly $15,000 after tax on a typical mortgage, and there's more of that to come. That's the fundamental problem that many households face now.
All right, so the cash rate's now 1.35. Some outliers are saying it'll get to 3%. Let's say it even gets under that, 2.5%. That'll be a significant increase, almost a doubling from where we are now. If we get to that position, we're talking about people's mortgage repayments doubling, and they start to pull back all their discretionary spending. That makes things more volatile in the economy. Jobs could go because businesses aren't making the money that they thought they might make, particularly at the services end. We maybe aren't going to travel and we won't go out to dinner as often. If you lose your job, there's no way you can furnish a mortgage. So this can be counterproductive, Ross. Are we getting a sense that these 2 or these 3 moves are going to get inflation under control, or is it going to just have to keep being ratcheted up?
Well, there's the risk, because one small instructive thing, and remember, some say that central banks around the world have a bit of groupthink on these things. There's no doubt. There's a central organisation called the Bank of International Settlements. They're all members of it, so they all get together and think about what they're going to do about inflation. At the moment, it's putting up interest rates. And so the point is, what you heard Jerome Powell say last week was he would prefer to risk his economy, the US economy, slowing down and even potentially going into recession than having the prospect of long-term inflation embedded in the economy. Now, I kind of get that. So the point about this is here, you talk about the potential job losses. One of the fundamental problems in Australia is house prices have got so high over a long period of time that in capital cities in particular, Melbourne and Sydney especially, you almost need 2 incomes to be able to justify paying the prices of those properties. And what's going to happen is it's not necessarily you lose your complete income. You lose one job or half of that job, and that is where a lot of families are going to feel the pinch towards the end of this year and into next year.
All right, another really big player in our economy is obviously construction, the housing sector. We've had a number of companies fall over this year alone. We had the possible collapse of Metricon back in May. News on the weekend, another one, Langford Jones Homes, is the latest to enter liquidation. How worried should we be?
Oh, seriously worried. This industry is not only a big employer, but it is a fundamental, sort of driver of the economy. Remember, when governments want to try and stimulate the economy, they stimulate the home building industry. And so this is where many of these are being caught by not having enough labour, rising wages. They've been caught by the price of their supplies, and so as a result you suddenly see a group of them this year have collapsed. I've put this list together and you can see the names just go on and on. ProBuild was massive, Condev was massive, Langford Jones is pretty big as well, but there's more of these as well, as you can see through here. So all of these companies, big building companies, have collapsed. And so fundamentally this is not good for jobs, it's not good for the people who have had their homes built by these organisations. It's clearly not good for the economy. And in some ways, I think, Peter, this is almost a taste of what you might get as interest rates rise to quell this inflation, that really you might get significant damage to many companies really struggling in Australia right now.
Tough times ahead. Ross, I know it's a big day for you, RBA Day. I really appreciate you staying around tonight to join us here on Credlin.